Welcome once again to the TitleFight.com Roundtable. Got your boy Brandon Stubbs on the line with us here, Gordy Tamayo, Steve Guy listening, and we're going to be going over last night's Showtime card featuring Danny Garcia's homecoming, as what was the tagline for the bout here, going back in Bayamon, Puerto Rico to defend his titles against the rugged Mexican vet Mauricio Herrera. And to kick things off, I want to just kind of jump back a little bit to the Showtime Extreme portion of it, where we had a rematch from some years back. Juan Manuel Lopez coming up and taking on Daniel Ponce De Leon after their first encounter years back. And what we saw was, a couple times each one got dropped. Ended up seeing a stoppage that had appeared somewhat controversial, and that kind of stirred up some buzz there as well. I myself had some shock factor take place. I did not plan on seeing Juanma come out and stop Ponce De Leon, or the ref at least stopping the fight, I should say. Now we have a kind of a different twist that's taking place here now after this outcome here. Brandon, did you expect something like this to occur? What was your overall take on how things ended up between these two?
Well, going into the bout, I said that this was going to be the fight of the night there, or a part of that Showtime card. I honestly think it did deliver. The second round, where the fight did end, could be, one of the early contenders of round of the year with both men going down. As far as the stoppage goes, I can understand Ponce's beef with it. I thought it was a bit premature, but at the same token, you have to always err on the side of safety for the fighter. Could he have landed a wild hook and possibly knocked Juanma down? Absolutely. But Juanma was hitting with some clean shots, had rattled him and knocked him down twice. Granted, there's no 3 knockdown rule down there in Puerto Rico. So, it was maybe a little bit early of a stoppage, but it was everything I expected it to be. I knew it was not going to go long. I was excited for the fight. I thought overall it was a good matchup and a really good performance on Juanma's part, getting up off the canvas early in the second round to go in and close the show.
Yeah, no, he did. He did what he had to do. He caught him with the same shot that he caught him last time with, though. What's on the table now going forward? I mean, coming into this bout, this was kind of a make-or-break fight for Juanma. He's had some pretty rough outings the last couple times out, and it was kind of seeming like this was just another card put together to kind of beef up the card that was taking place for the main event. Now that he's coming away with this win, that he proved a lot of people wrong and just kind of surprised a lot of people. What do we see out of Juanma from here going forward?
We definitely see, Ponce bounce back and Daniel Ponce De Leon is one of the tougher guys that is out there. As far as Juanma goes, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. Twitter activity said, oh man, Juanma's back. He's going to be, back in there as a contender for a lot of these titles, but at the end of the day, we've seen some of his performances here earlier, not earlier this year, but last year, and he just kind of seemed to be somewhat of a shot fighter. He'll have some tread left on his tire, but, are you just going to feed him to the wolves and just use him as a gatekeeper, or can he be a legit champion? I mean, he's going to end up scoring, a pretty decent fight because he is still a name. He does still carry some weight. I think he could do ticket sales well down in Puerto Rico, so he's going to be able to get a fight against someone of some caliber. But will it be, anything in the same way it did when he fought, Salido, or when he fought, Mikey Garcia? Will it end up in the same brutal fashion? It's a pretty good chance it will. But I think it does open an opportunity for him to make at least one more nice payday before he finally, calls it a career per se, as far as being a top-tier fighter.
Well, moving forward, in one of the more odd fights, in my own take here of the evening, what we expected to be kind of somewhat of a brutal slugfest between two up-and-comers who are trying to, captivate audience's attention, at least as the next great heavyweight, and Deontay Wilder taking on Malik Scott. Now, both of these guys, as has been well documented leading up into the fight, get along. They're friends, they've sparred together, whatnot, hype building up to the fight. These guys have both been talking about, hey, they're going to just come to knock the other person's head off. Wilder, of course, looking forward to extending that KO streak, was very vocal about knocking the guy out. What we've seen was a quick stoppage of the fight, first round knockout of Malik Scott, and then on the replay showed a couple other things that led people to be really questionable about the outcome of this. Brandon, let's throw to you first here. throw it out there. What was your interpretation of how things played out? Wilder coming out and just stopping him in the first round. Is this what you expected, and what did you think of that?
Now, I thought Wilder's power would be the difference. I thought he would, assume he would get a stoppage of some sorts. Not in the way that we saw here Saturday night. I will say this. I don't want to use the D word and say it was a dive on Malik Scott's part. But I will say that the first punch did kind of hit him behind the ear, which can knock your equilibrium off. Mm-hmm. It didn't hit as clean as, most of those shots that typically do land there can knock your equilibrium off. But, to hear the Showtime commentator say, Wilder's so powerful, even a clipping shot like that can rock you. I don't know if I can completely co-sign with that, but I do think it was maybe one of those things where Scott might not have just wanted to be in there. And, after his questionable loss, his last time out over in Europe, at being Malik Scott, now this fight here Saturday night, I'm starting to kind of wonder if this is something he wants to do on a full-time basis, if he just gets in there, for a couple of rounds and says, all right, I'm going down, I'm staying down. So I don't think this helps out Wilder's case that much, just kind of the way it ended, but it is what it is. I mean, he's now next in line for the Cristobal Arreola Severn winner. So, I mean, he's going to get his title shot regardless. So best of luck to him with that.
Yeah, no, it's everything that they've been kind of mapping out towards there. So, as you stated, he's got that Alabama power there. I mean, he must got some Bruce Lee type power in there too for being able to stop Scott like that. But, going up against one of these other two that carry some pretty tough chins in Arreola and Stavern. We've seen him knock out these other guys there, and which seems that he does have that legitimate power there. So we'll take a peek and see if that's truly the case here once he gets in the ring with one of these other dudes. But Steve, what was your take on the bout there, and what do you expect next for Wilder if he was to step in against either Arreola or Stavern?
Well, when I saw the knockout, it happened so quick. You turn your head for just a second, and all of a sudden you look up, and Scott is down. At first it looked like just maybe a jab put him down, and they show the replays, and then it looked like that right hand landed too cleanly, but it did show that a left hand did land before the right, high on the head. And I think that if I make a case for a legitimate knockout, I'll give it on the grounds that the left hand landed high on the head, kind of delayed reaction, and then of course the right followed it up, and he went down, and that was it. So I really can't say whether that was a dive or a legitimate knockout. Replay kind of does show that there was a punch that landed that could have caused a knockout, so I'm going to go with that.
Well, Brandon, let me get your take on here. Predictions for Wilder stepping in against the winner of Stavern or Arreola, either one.
I think if it's Arreola, it would be it's going to be an ugly slugfest. To where if that goes past 3 rounds, I would be shocked. I honestly think, though, with either Stavern or Arreola, both those guys can actually box when they need to. We don't know if Wilder can actually box if he needs to. He's just been going over and overwhelming guys with his punching power and his power shots. So if he's forced to box and he's dragged in deep water, I just don't see him being able to do it. And it's one of those things, until he shows he can do it, I have to bet against him in those regards. So I don't like his chances against either one of those gentlemen. But it also depends on how much is taken out of both Arreola and Stavern when they face each other. Those two could go to war, and they could be somewhat, taken down a notch by the time they face Wilder. So, but as it stands now, I don't like Wilder's chances against either one of those gentlemen.
What about you, Steve?
I give Wilder a great chance against either one of them guys. It's time for him to step up, face the big boys, and I think he has a real good chance with his height and his power. We know Arreola's got a good chin, not so much to burn, but I like to see how either of these guys would take Wilder's punch. Wilder can hit. He's 31-0 with 31 knockouts. That's got to say something. So I think that once he does step up, I think give him a great shot. If he can land those shots early, if he can make a statement early, I can see him, cruising his way to a decision or, a knockout.
Okay. And moving forward, in the main event of the evening there, we had Danny Garcia, who was coming off of definitely an impressive win over Lucas Matisse last year, stepping in against, what we can say was somewhat of a keep-busy fight for him before him making possibly the transition over into the 147-pound division here, and what was dubbed homecoming, or his homecoming, going back to his ancestral roots of Puerto Rico, to win over some of the fans and, grow his fan base over there. But what we saw was a fight that, didn't look like something the Garcia camp had planned for. Herrera, definitely a seasoned vet, came in with his usual output of throwing out that jab consistently. Boxing just really threw Garcia off his game plan. Didn't seem like Garcia could really figure him out and really, dismantle him like he has in the past with other opponents. So what we saw in the cards, which was with much debate, Garcia walked away with the decision here, majority decision, and he didn't look too convinced himself that he had won. Brandon, what did you think?
I don't think he did win. I mean, that's just the gist of it. I don't think he won the fight. I think it was a quote-unquote home cooking as far as the judging goes. There's no way with some of those scores that those judges could have been watching the same fight everybody else was watching. And I think he knew it. I think he knew that something was up because you didn't see his enthusiasm, in the corner, as you were stating. I heard people in his corner telling, walk around, put your hands up, and he was like, no, I'm not.
Right.
He knew he didn't do a good job. And, I mean, he wasn't, going to try to sell that to the judges. You can't blame him for the judges' outcome. He did his job. He went out and fight. He left it in the judges' hands. But this was definitely a gifted victory on his end, and he just looked very sluggish. Just didn't seem to have the same output that he usually has. So I don't know if he didn't take the guy serious or what. But he just didn't look good out there at all.
Yeah, he didn't at all. Didn't look like he. I mean, oddly enough, he's the one that carried the quote-unquote larger power, yet he was being walked down by Herrera, and it seemed like he was maybe trying to just catch him coming in so he could counter him, but just totally off rhythm. And unlike his previous fights where Danny has shown impeccable timing, he just wasn't able to really pull the trigger. And props to Herrera. I mean, he did come in with the game plan. He executed that game plan, and he was prepared for that left hand. I mean, you've seen Guerrero miss left and right with that shot, and Herrera would just, seasoned vet, man. His props to him and his camp. They really did what they had to do. Sadly enough, we'll probably forget about this fight, to be honest. A lot of people will, and things are going to move on. You won't see Herrera on that same platform again, maybe. Danny now talking about possibly cutting the weight and keeping at that weight for, close to a decade here, that could have affected his performance, and his team is going to sit down and think about moving up to 147. With that kind of performance, I mean, Steve, what do we look at if he's going to be stepping in with some of the big dogs at 147? What do you think?
I think I give him a good chance to hang in there with him. I think it's time for him to move up if he wants some of the bigger fights in the higher weight divisions. Herrera fight, he didn't take him. He did take him lightly. He looked sloppy. He looked sluggish in the fight. Wasn't very interested in it. Just wanted to get it over with. Herrera did get robbed. I think he deserved the decision, but, I can't say that's going to affect Danny going forward. It was an off night. He'll shake it off. He'll move up, and, he'll face some of the bigger boys, and I think he'll do very well.
What about you, Brandon? What's your thoughts there?
Depending on the matchmaking that they put him at 147, I think he can do okay there. I don't know if his power will move up with him to 147. That would be the only question I would have in regards to him going up in weight. But you can definitely tell something was off about last night. Whether it be the weight, whether him being down there in a foreign area and training and trying to promote the fight down there and having that burden on him, that has played a part of it as well. But the move to 147, is logical. We knew it was going to be happening here soon. But it's all going to be about matchmaking those first couple of bouts out to really see what he can do there at that heavier weight. They can't put him in there against bangers early on, or he's going to get destroyed. There's going to be my only question is, can that power they had at 140 move up with him to 147?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I mean, he's young still. He's got a lot left in him, and maybe he's just had a one-off here. Bad night, so to speak. We'll give him that and see what happens when he returns here. One of the other bouts I wanted to touch base on that we got wind of here last week that was going to be taking place was going to be Sean Porter, newly crowned champion after taking it away from Devin Alexander. Now he's going to be stepping in against Paulie Malignaggi. And this is a bout that seemed to have come about after Malignaggi joining forces with some pretty influential people. Now he's got another crack at a title here. Steve, give me your breakdown or your take on this matchup right here.
It's a fairly good matchup. Good test for Porter, against a very solid seasoned vet, with a lot of experience. It's pretty much a test for Porter. I don't think Malignaggi can, handle someone as young and hungry as Porter is, he did handle Broner very well. Of course, he was able to outbox, much, older, much, pretty much the end of his road, Zab Judah. But I think, it's basically a good test for Porter. I see him, going in, probably having some problems early because Paulie is a crappy veteran. But I think as the fight goes on, he's going to solve the puzzle and outbox Paulie. That punching power of Paulie's, or lack of, is going to be the difference in this fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a nice stage for Porter to get on once again here. He's trying to build up his awareness to the boxing public here of who he is and what he's been doing now on another fight card headlined by Bernard Hopkins and Bibut Shimunov. So we'll see how he's able to handle this next stage here. Brandon, what are your predictions for this fight?
Yeah, I completely agree with Steve. It's going to be, the lacking punching power of Paulie Malignaggi is always going to be something of his downfall and his Achilles heel. So Porter's going to be able to kind of maybe weather the early storm. He's going to have to try to outwork probably those early rounds until he can kind of figure out his tendencies and his cadences there in the ring. But I look for Porter to come on strong here back half of the fight. He's a younger guy. He has a lot he wants to prove. He wants to get his name out there. He wants to be respected amongst the top fighters there at 147, not only because he's a belt holder now, but he wants to get major fights and be on bigger platforms and not be a co-main event. He wants to be the main event himself. So I think he's going to go out. He's just going to really put on a great boxing performance, but he's going to have to weather some early rounds and just kind of get used to what Paulie's doing out there. But otherwise than that, I think he should have a very, very easy back half of the fight and be able to win rather convincingly.
Right on. Well, you got it right there from the team over here at TheTitleFight.com. It's Brandon Stubbs, Steve Gallegos, and Gordy Tomorrow. Thanking you again for tuning in. Make sure you check out my boy Brandon, Punch to the Face Radio, every Wednesday evening. PunchToTheFace.com. You can keep tabs with him on the MMA sector there. Of course, the Ultimate Sports Talk Network keeping us in the loop with what they got going on and pushing out our stuff through them. So much love and shout-outs to them. Everybody over at the Bad Culture Network, want to give a shout-out and props to what they're doing over there in the movement. And I want to thank you, again, all of you for tuning in. Keep tabs with us. Once again, signing off. Until next time.